We start with the to-do list, and you have homework due on the 26th. It's homework number 7. And I've posted a quiz. Quiz number 4 is on Canvas. It's due the same day. Okay. We are doing notes for homework 7. We left off with factoring. I talked about factoring trinomials using a diamond or a grid. I'm going to use one diamond, maybe a couple diamonds today, but mostly I want to explain this grid. Going to factor 6x squared. I need this whole minus 13x minus 5. So I'm going to do this one with a diamond, where you draw like a big X. It's part of the diamond. In the top, you put the numbers on the end multiply together. 6 times negative 5 would be negative 30. And whatever number is in the middle just goes right down to the bottom, negative 13. And you have to guess. You have to guess 2 numbers that will multiply to negative 30 and add to negative 13. So multiply to this, they add to that. So you can go through like all the possibilities. You could start with 30 and 1, but that's not really going to work. Then I would go with 2 times 15 and then put a negative sign somewhere. If I want to add to negative 13, I need the 15 to have a negative sign on it. And then those numbers multiply to negative 30. So that's my guess on how to rewrite that middle term. So I'm using 2 and negative 15 to replace this part right here. So we're taking this, the 6x squared minus 13x minus 5, and it's going to be 6x squared plus 2x minus 15x minus 5. And I don't ever use shortcuts with diamonds because it doesn't, like a shortcut doesn't always work for me or from what I've seen. So I just always do this scratch work where you start to like group, you pair up these guys and these guys. For the first pair, factor out 2x. That would make 3x plus 1. And then from the next pair, I'm going to factor out negative 5. Which would leave a 3x plus 1. And from this term and this term, we factor out 3x plus 1. This is common to both terms, so it's like similar to greatest common factor. Factor to the front. From the first term, you leave a 2x, and then you're going to subtract 5. And that's your answer. So you're trying to go from, I would say, like an expanded form to a product. Write your expression as a product of polynomials and factor each part as much as you can, down to its smallest factors. Okay, next, let's try using a grid. Factoring 8r squared minus 2r minus 1. So with this grid, let's kind of copy this down. And then separate and keep this sign with its corresponding value. Like that negative sign is on 2r. So when I split this, I'm going to keep the minus sign there. And that negative sign with 1. So I'm going to draw a bar down through here. And then okay, for this guess and check style, you find two numbers that multiply to 8r squared and two numbers that multiply to negative 1. So I think I'm going to go with 4r times 2r would be 8r squared. On the other side, we need 1 times negative 1. I'm going to try just the positive 1 and the negative 1 here. That's my first guess. All right, after that, cross multiply. 2r times positive 1 is 2r. And then 4r times negative 1 would be negative 4r. All right, then you add those ends. 2r plus negative 4r is negative 2r. Oh, cool, I got the right guess. So if you add the ends, and that number is the middle term, then you've found your factors. So first of all, what you can do next, and it works out every time, but these are the correct factors. Go straight across. It's 4r plus 1 times 2r minus 1. Let's write this over here. 8r squared minus 2r minus 1, and we factored it into 4r plus 1 times 2r. So the idea is you can do all the scratch work in between from here to here, and you just do the same thing as before, as you rewrite this middle term, but the numbers you use from the grid are the side numbers. The positive 2r and the negative 4r is going to be that number you replace with negative 2r. Let's just work through it. We've got time. Okay, so if you want to do the work, the steps from here to here, you take 8r squared, rewrite the middle term using the ends this part here. Okay, so we've already found the answer. I'm just doing scratch work to explain where it comes from. But with the grid, I always trust that I find the right factors. With a diamond, I always like to do the scratch work, just to be clear, just to be safe. Okay, we've got 8r squared. Replace negative 2r with a positive 2r, and a negative 4r. And then we factor by grouping. Group these and then pair those. Factor out a 2r, which will leave 4r plus 1. From this pair, I'm going to factor out the negative. This would make this a positive 4r and a positive 1. Okay, from this term and this term, there's the 4r plus 1 in common. So we'll factor it to the front. It doesn't have to be in the front, that's just my style. It could be on the second factor. But if we have this as the first factor, bring it over here. Use a 2r minus 1 up there. So I got that same answer. This is where the work comes from. You still rewrite the middle term and then do grouping. Keep factoring. No problem. X squared plus 18x minus 8. So you could use a diamond, but I want to practice using the grid. Let's copy this expression down. Set up a grid. So we split this up. The plus sign on 18 and the negative sign on 8. This end, you get two numbers that multiply to 5x squared, like 5x times x. This side, you find two numbers that multiply to negative 8. I'm just going to give it a guess, like 2 times 4. And we'll make the 4 negative. So those multiply to -8, and then after that, we'll see what happens. We'll cross multiply. X times 2 is 2x. 5x times -4 would be -20x. And then you take the ends and add them together. This adds to -18x. So I'm close, but not quite there. I need to have positive 18x to know that I've gotten the correct factors. So we just have to scratch this out and try again. So I'm going to stick with 5x times x. I think if I just change where the negative sign is, I should be fine. I'm going to keep 2 here, but make 2 negative, and then this will be +4. So it's multiplied to -8, but when you cross multiply, this will be a -2x. And down here is a +20x. And then you add the ends together. And if you get the middle term, then you have the right guess. So you've got +20x with a -20x is 18x, which is our middle term. So it has to match exactly. It can't be like off by a negative sign. You have to start over, guess again, till you get the right middle term. Then this will factor into 5x minus 2 times x plus 4. And again, if you're not comfortable going from here straight to the answer, you can do those little steps by rewriting 18x with those side numbers, the 20x and the -2x. So replace those with that middle value, do the factor by grouping, you'll end up with that product. So a place where these grids are really nice to use is when there's more than one variable. Like this has only one variable of x. But if there's 2 variables, I would use this guess and check. Like we're going to factor 3a squared minus 5ab minus 2b squared. Okay, so I'm going to use, definitely when there's like variables, 2 variables, a and b, I'm going to use the grid. And split this here with the negative sign on 5ab, and that negative sign goes on 2b squared. On this end, you get 2 numbers that multiply to 3a squared, like 3a times a. This side, two numbers that multiply to negative 2b squared. Maybe positive b times negative 2b. It's just a guess. Let's see what happens. I multiply across and get positive ab. Multiply this way, and that's a negative 6ab. And then negative, oh, I got the right guess. Didn't expect that to happen. Negative 6ab plus positive ab is negative 5ab. This is messy. Okay, so if we've got a match, negative 5ab is the middle term. So I got lucky with the right guess on the first try. You factor this to a 3a plus b times a minus 2b. Again, first factor is 3a plus b. The second factor is in the bottom row, a minus 2b. And if you just want to check how to get from here to here, you rewrite that middle term, negative 5ab, using the ends, the plus ab and the minus 6ab, and do the factor by grouping. Look at that answer. Okay, one more grid. Want to factor. It is 2x squared minus 7xy. Minus 4y squared. And I'm going to use a grid. Let's copy this down. Split this up to negative 7xy and then negative 4y squared. On this side, you get two numbers that multiply to 2x squared, like 2x times x. On this side, you need two numbers that multiply to negative 4y squared. You could try 4y and negative y, or maybe 2y and negative 2y. I went with this guess first. 2y times negative 2y would be my negative 4y squared. Then I'm going to see what happens. I cross multiply. This would be negative 2xy. Down here is positive 4xy. And then add those together. To get 2xy. But we're looking for negative 7xy, which means I have to try again. Oh, we're doing the same thing, but we just need to redo our grid. Is the 2x squared minus 7xy. I'm going to keep that guess the same, 2x times x. And on this side, I'm just going to try the negative sign down here. And let's see if that works. So you go across 2x times negative 2y is negative 4xy. And x times 2y would be 2xy. Okay, so that's not going to work. If I add these together, I would get negative 2xy. And negative 7xy. So let's try that again. What the 2x squared minus 7x minus 4 squared. Okay, I'm going to keep the 2x times x as that first guess. I'm going to go with 4y and y, but I need to pick a place to have a negative sign. And I'm going to put the 4y over here because I'm trying to get closer to this middle term. 7xy, that would give me a 8xy. I put 4y. I need 4y times negative y to be negative 4y squared. Actually, I can already tell that that's going to be a negative sign in the wrong spot. So I'm going to put it down here and give negative 4y times y a chance. That would be negative 8xy. And this is positive xy. Add those together to get that negative 7xy, which is what I wanted. Okay, so we got it. We've gotten this factored into 2x plus y times x minus 4y. So you take the first row, multiply it with the second row, the 2x plus y multiplied with the positive x and a minus 4. Like I said before, if you're not comfortable jumping from here straight to the answer, to do the work in the middle, you rewrite 7xy using those pieces at the end, the plus xy and the minus 8xy. You do factor by grouping, and you'll get that answer. Okay, there's one more kind of factoring that we need to talk about, and then we're going to use factoring to solve equations. So the last one is how to factor difference of squares. which we've sort of seen before. And I'll try to summarize all of the factoring we've learned and when to use which one as soon as I can, but definitely before the next test. I'll figure out how to explain which type of factoring to use for like different polynomials. All right, this one's the difference of squares. Which we've seen before. We're just doing the reverse direction. We went from a squared minus b squared to a minus b times a plus b. Which is the same as a plus b times a minus b. If you want to flip those factors around, that's fine. But well, I think what we did was we had this part, and instead of FOILing, we jumped to a squared minus b squared. This time we're going to set up, if we have two terms and subtraction in the middle, we're going to see if we can set them up as a difference of squares and then jump to factored form. We've got a product of the difference of squares. Okay, let's do this one. X squared minus 25. So first, this difference of squares is for two numbers. So if you spot two numbers and a difference between them, then check if you can write them as a number squared minus another number squared. Like this one's going to be x squared minus 5 squared. So you can do x minus 5 multiplied with x plus 5. That's the answer. Or if you just like the plus sign first, you can have an x plus 5. And then the x minus 5. It's the same answer either way. You need a minus sign and a plus sign, or the plus sign then the minus sign. All right, we want to factor x to the 10th minus 100. So we're going to take, well, first of all, I can just spot that there's two terms, like these two terms. There's a difference between them. So I'm going to try to make that first number have a power of 2 using the right rules, and try to set up the other number as a power of 2 and then jump to that. Let's take this x to the 10th minus 100 and write it as x to a power of 5, and then that has a power of 2. So you have a power to a power, you multiply those together to get that 10. And my goal is to have some number with power 2 outside. 100 would be 10 squared. So x to the 5th squared minus 10 squared would be x to the 5th minus 10 times x to the 5th plus 10. We are going to factor 3x cubed y. minus 3xy. Okay, first of all, with any problem that says factor, start with looking for the greatest common factor. This greatest common factor includes 3. We've got 3 common to both terms. And there's an x and a y. So if we let's start with this polynomial. Factoring out to 3xy. Factored out 3 from x cubed, we factored out an x, which would leave x squared. And we factored out that y. So we're on to subtracting, factored out 3 and the x and the y. So what's left is 1. Okay, and then what's in the parentheses can be written as a difference of squares. We've got x squared minus 1 squared. There's a 3xy times x squared, and we rewrite 1 as 1 squared. And that part in the parentheses is the difference of squares. So you've got your 3xy. And factor this to x plus 1 times x minus 1. We are doing another one. Let's see. If you find some, we're going to look at this. So if you see something like this is factor. And then it says like, let's do x squared plus 9. Even though you can write 9 as a number squared, it's not a difference of squares. You need a minus sign right here. So this one can't be factored any further. So I would say either like already, maybe just say can't be factored further. And just, well, I guess to be clear, we can't be factored as a difference of squares, is what my point is. Okay, now we want to talk about a property. It's called the zero product property. Let A and B be real numbers. Capital A. So I'm going to put this up and let you think for a moment, but if you have A times B and it's equal to 0, what do you know about A or B? Take a number A times a number B and you get 0. Do you know anything about A and B? You cannot write a B right now. Come on, B. Bam. Okay, if A times B is 0, then either A has to be 0 or B has to be 0 if you want to have a result of 0 from that product. And especially from teaching this class before, I know it can be weird sometimes to have a lot of writing in math. Even just saying that it's this or that, just writing or can seem weird. But we need to just get comfortable with kind of writing out what's happening and know that sometimes math seems like it's all symbols, but it's just nice to be clear, just say what's going on. And in this case, I'm always going to write or, and I might even highlight the or so we know that there's two things happening, this thing or this thing. And or is a big deal, by the way. It means it can be that, or it can have A equal to 0. It could be the case that B equals 0, or you can have both A and B equal to 0, since 0 times 0 would be 0. So this means one, the other, or both. All right, let's try this. Solve. So solve means we're going to have an equation. We have x minus 1 times x plus 2 equal to 0. So when you see solve, you expect to have an equal sign, and you find values of the variable that make that statement true. Other problems we've had, like the ones we were just doing before, they said simplify. There's no equal sign. You just take your expression and write it with as few terms as possible, as simplified as possible. Okay, what's happening here is this number times that number equals 0. So this is representing A, and this is B. So if this times that is 0, x minus 1 equals 0, or x plus 2 equals 0. So we set up two equations using that property. There's that equation, or, and I'm going to just put a bubble, like a highlight. The other equation, which is x plus 2, would be equal to 0. And then like separate this and solve each one separately. Okay, on this side, you just add 1 to both sides. And x would equal positive 1. On this side, we need to subtract 2 for both sides. We got x equal to negative 2. Here's another one where we're going to solve for x. Values of x that make the statement true. And we're going to look at x times 5x minus 9. And it's equal to 0. So we've got that number times that number equal to 0. Then either that first value of x would equal 0, or that other number, whatever 5x minus 9 is, if it's equal to 0. And I'm just going to solve them separately. On this side, actually, we're done. X equal to 0, let's get to go. Get 0. On this side, I need to add 9 to both sides of the equation. And then 5x is equal to 9. And divide both sides by 5 to get x equal to 9/5. Okay, now we look at something like 2x squared minus 5x. And it's equal to 0. Okay, so the reason why I brought up this property is because we want to solve equations using factoring. So if we first get your equation equal to 0, because that's part of the property, you have to have a number times number equals 0. So that part's good. Set equal to 0, and on this side, we'll factor. I think all we need to do is take out the greatest common factor, x. Which will leave 2x minus 5. It still equals 0. Then x times 2x minus 5 equal to 0 means either x is 0 or 2x minus 5 equals 0. Then you just look at them separate. This side's done. X equals 0 is one of your solutions. On this side, we need to solve for x. So you add 5 to each side. Do x equal to 5, you'll get x equal to 5/2. want to solve x squared minus 10x plus 21 equal to 0. So just to remind you of the property, it's when you have a number times a number equal to 0. Then you can set each of those numbers equal to 0. So the equal to 0 part is taken care of. I need to write this side as a product. So I'm going to do scratch work to factor this part, the x squared minus 10x plus 21. All right, I can use either a diamond or a grid. I think I want to practice using the grid. So we do x squared negative 10x x times x is x squared. Go with 3 times 7 is 21. And if I were to do the cross multiplication now, I would get 3x plus 7x, which is positive 10x, but I need a negative 10x. So I'm going to make this negative 3 and negative 7, which those two multiply to positive 21. But this side is now negative 3x. The other one is negative 7x. And then you add your bits together. It's negative 10x, which is the middle term. Okay, so this side will factor into x minus 3 times x minus 7. So let's go back to the beginning. You're given x squared minus 10x plus 21, and it's equal to 0. And then on this side, we found out how to factor x squared minus 10x plus 21 is x minus 3 times x minus 7. And then copy down the rest. And I did that to use the property. If I've got this times this equal to 0, either the first factor is 0 or the second factor is 0. Nope, it's too much. Okay, I've set up two equations. On the first equation, or for the first equation, if I add 3 to both sides, my solution is x equals 3. One of my solutions is x equals 3. The other one you get from adding 7 to both sides. And then x equals 7 for another solution. by the way, we're only doing these kinds of examples for the rest of class. I'm going to continue to just solve problems by using that property. Solve problems using factoring. Okay, this time we're going to look at x plus 3 times x minus 1 times x plus 2 equals 0. So it's the same thing from before. If you have a 0 on this side, one of those numbers has to be 0. Either x plus 3 was a 0, x minus 1 was 0, or x plus 2 was 0. That way you have 0 times the rest would equal 0. So this is using that property to set up 3 equations. There's the x plus 3 equals 0. Or x minus 1 equals 0. And there's another one from that part. Or x plus 2. I'm trying to do over here. But that equals 0. So for the first one, you'd subtract 3 from each side and get x equal to negative 3. Here we're going to add 1 to both sides. X equals 1. The third solution is where you subtract 2 from each side and have x equal to negative 2. Okay. We want 4x squared equal to 81. Okay, the first thing you need to use the property, which I'm just going to put this property on the side. So remember, if A times B equals 0, then A is 0 or B is 0. So if I want to use the property, I need my equation to look like this. I need a number times a number set equal to 0. So this is like your the first part to get is your equation equal to 0. So let's subtract 81 from both sides. And then 4x squared minus 81 is equal to 0. So I got that part. Now we're starting to get there with a match for that first line. This other side, I want to factor as a difference of squares. I've got this first term I can write as 2x, that quantity squared. 81 is 9 squared. Okay, 2x squared minus 9 squared is 2x minus 9 times 2x plus 9. And that equals 0. So now here's my A, like I could call this for that part over there. This is what I'm calling A. This is what I call B. I've got my A times B equals 0, which means I can take A, put it equal to 0. I can take B, put it equal to 0. And that's how I get my two solutions. Your first factor is 2x minus 9. We get to put that equal to 0 using the property. The one is a 2x plus 9, and that's equal to 0. So it's this or that. This side will add 9 to both sides. 2x equal to 9. Divide both sides by 2, and you'll get x equal to 9/2. Here, we subtract 9 from each side. Then 2x is equal to negative 9. Divide both sides by 2, and your other solution is x equal to negative 9/2. Pretty sure we have time for one more example. We will use x minus 6 squared and it's equal to 6 plus 5x. Okay. Part of what we need to do is get this set equal to 0. We also want to expand the expression so that we can then combine like terms. So I'm going to start with expanding. We're going to multiply out this side. So it's FOIL, there's an x squared minus 6x minus 6x is a negative 12x. And then plus 36. Right. And then not only am I combining like terms, but I also want one side set equal to 0. So I want the numbers to go together, and we're going to forget everything over here on this side. So let's subtract 6 from both sides. And I'm also going to subtract in the same step, or you can do it as a separate step, but also subtract 5x from each side. On this side is x squared minus 17x plus 30 equal to 0. So that equal to 0 part is important. That's the first thing I need. The next thing I need is this side written as a product. So we're going to factor. And I think I'll use a grid. You can use a grid or a diamond. So this is scratch work over on the side, just to factor x squared minus 17x plus 30. X squared, subtract 17x, subtract 30, what's that? And for x squared, I'll use x times x. For negative 30, let's go with 15 times 2, and I need a negative sign somewhere. Let's see. Oh, aha, that's my problem. There's a plus 30 here, which means this is a plus 30 right there. And I do need these to add up to negative 17. So put a negative sign up front of 15 and in front of 2. Negative 2 times negative 15 is positive 30. And then cross multiply to get negative 15x. Multiply here to get negative 2x. Add those ends together, which is negative 17x. And that's my middle term. So that side is going to factor into x minus 15 times x minus 2. Now, when I've got a number times a number equal to 0, I use the property. Either the first factor is 0 or the second factor is 0. So put x minus 15 equal to 0 and to put x minus 2 equal to 0, and then solve them both. The other factor is x minus 2. We can put that equal to 0. Okay, so I'm going to get two solutions. On this side, I add 15 to both sides, and I get x equal to 15. On the other side, we're going to add 2 to each side. Or for my other equation, add 2 to both sides. I get x equal to 2. Okay, so that's really all that you need for this homework. But if you have any questions, like I know some of the homework problems are a little tricky when they're like, if this is a factor of that, find the missing number. If you need help with something like that, let me know, or maybe we'll do that on Tuesday next week. But we're going to call this good for today. Please work on your quiz and your homework. And then have a good weekend.